What is up, everybody? I am your legendary commander, and welcome back to Baldur's Gate 3. In this video, we're going to talk about the sleep spell and why it is a slept-on spell, and at the same time, it's not slept on at all, and it's not any good in Baldur's Gate 3, and the devs ruined my favorite spell. So sleep is a very powerful spell, but they kind of ruined it for what it used to do. In fact, you just saw a minute ago how they ruined it. In Baldur's Gate 3, sleep only lasts for 2 rounds. There is no save for this spell, it just happens. Now that might not all sound bad until you realize how it actually works. Essentially, if you cast sleep on somebody, they have their entire turn where they will remain asleep, and upon next round when they get back to their turn, they'll still be asleep. However, at the end of that turn, the effect will end, essentially meaning it doesn't really last 2 rounds, it lasts more like 1.5 rounds, 1 round. The reason for this is the way they do spell effects. Essentially, spell effects end on the target's turn. They don't end on the caster's turn like they would in D&D. This means basically no spell is allowed to only last 1 round. You might also notice True Strike does this. It technically lasts 2 rounds. Now what can happen is if you catch the enemy by surprise, like I did here, the enemy essentially gets 1 turn out of combat, and then the next turn they're in combat, but because they went before me, they woke up immediately, meaning my entire sleep spell did me no good. The surprise, haha, you're asleep, didn't do any good. And while we're on the subject of not doing any good, there's always the chance you run into a group of elves, and it doesn't do any good because they're all immune to sleep. Thus, you can't even cast it on them. Now let's just get the last of the bad bits of sleep out of the way, and then we'll continue on why sleep is a good spell, and if you can maneuver it right, it can do you a lot of good. Unfortunately, there also is this thing where they made shoving a bonus action rather than an action, which means an enemy can attack and wake up their ally. So what can happen is if you don't capitalize on it immediately, the enemy, when it comes to one of their turns, can run over, shove their ally awake, and as well fight the enemy. Also, the sleeping opponent does receive back all their actions and bonus actions. Of course, the flip side to this is when it's done to you, it's great that you can shove your allies awake, so give and take. And the final thing bad, but maybe good at the same time, is that it is 24 HP that can be spread across multiple targets, whereas it normally is 5d8 in D&D. What this means is you get a fixed number rather than a random low or a random real high number where you can do more or less with the spell. It does make it more consistent, knowing exactly what it can do. However, that means it does fall off at higher level because you only get 8 additional HP per level that you upcast it, which sadly means at most you only get 64 points of damage that you can spread around, and at late game most targets have more than 64 HP on an individual, or at least they have 50, meaning you're only going to get like 1 character, whereas early on in the game you can get 2, 3, and if you do it right, 4, 10 creatures. But there's some possibilities to still use it if you really want to. So how is sleep a good spell though? How can you use it to your advantage? Well, first off, never open with the spell. Don't start a fight with sleep. That is just a waste of your resources. And if you do, hope you're first in initiative order, that way you can take advantage of it. So by taking advantage of it, what do you do? Well, you must make a melee attack to get the best advantage out of this. When a target is asleep, a melee attack has a 100% chance to hit, and it also gives an auto crit because they're unconscious. Now, depending on your target or targets might determine who you need in line with what you're about to do. If you're a singular enemy, having a cleric with inflict wounds, being able to run up and just cast inflict wounds and crit automatically could result in as much as 60 damage if it rolls at max damage. And that's of course before upcasting. So casting a roll to hit melee spell would be your ultimate way of hurting something that is really healthy that you managed to put asleep. Because once you attack, the creature will wake up. And once it wakes up, it is no longer unconscious. It will also no longer be prone. It will stand up. Meaning any successive hits are going to be done at regular. If it's multiple targets, someone like a fighter with good mobility might be a better option. Because if it's a lot of little targets, you can go around hitting one after the other. And normally, if your character has a good enough weapon, you'll do a lot of damage with each one. But with that said, it does require you to have your characters in a certain initiative order. This is one of the issues with trying to cast it, and if you have lined it up right, it will work in your favor, but if you haven't, it won't work in your favor. If the enemy comes directly after you cast sleep, especially if other enemies that are awake, they might just shove him awake, nullifying the opportunity. So determining who's next in the initiative order and maybe putting them to sleep, or maybe targeting characters that are just too far away that whoever's next in the initiative order can't run to save them and wake them up might be vitally important. At the very least, if you make sure the creatures nearby each other can't run and wake each other up, you can at least waste their turn. And speaking of wasting their turn, sometimes that might be all you need to do to save an NPC you don't want to die. But there is one final piece of damage that you can really do to an enemy. When a character is unconscious, they automatically fail their save, provided it is a dex or strength based save. Things like charm effects like charm person don't have this effect. But what that does mean Casting Fireball directly after casting Sleep means for those that are asleep, you're going to get full damage, which means you're probably going to get more damage out of your Fireball. You can also cast a cantrip like Sacred Flame, which usually when they succeed, they take no damage and guarantee at least some damage. If you can manage these things and orient them in the correct way, Sleep can be a very powerful spell. Unfortunately, Sleep falls off at later levels, and because of that, keep it in your back pocket is a question, whether or not you really want it or not. If you have the open slot and you don't know what else to put, I'd absolutely say keep it on you just in case. There might be a good opportunity. However, there's probably another spell that's better that could take that slot. With that all said, I hope this video helped you kind of figure out whether or not you want to take Sleep and how to use Sleep. But that's going to be it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure to tell your friends. But y'all take care. And I will catch you next time. Bye-bye.